You guys were really loud before, but now we can't hear you.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, when it works.
Yeah.
Amy, can you hear us?
Looks like she's frozen.
She's texting me.
Okay.
You guys should be all set.
Yeah, we can hear all.
Ask Shell if he can hear you.
I'm telling you, I can hear you.
We
Turn
can-
up the volume from.
I'm hearing like 20 people talking at once.
Okay, I can hear Shell. So, I don't think we're in.
Okay, sorry for the delay. We were just having some technical difficulties. And Shell, you want to talk one more time?
Hello.
Perfect.
Much better.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so Laura Baker from Valley CTC, would you like to explain everything to the select board?
I'll see if anyone can hear me first. How's it going? Right. So my name is Laura Baker. I work at the Valley Community Development Corporation. I'm a real estate project manager there. And I'm in fact showing you an extremely abbreviated version of the presentation that went to the trust because I hear that you have packed this agenda. So cover sheet, move. The scope of work for this project is unchanged from earlier conversations. We're talking about converting the existing 63-room hotel, 3 stories, to 50 apartments, 50 for tenants and 1 for a live-in staff member. We would do this by combining 24 existing rooms to create 12 one-bedroom units with kitchens, and then convert 39 existing rooms to studios, again by adding kitchens. Next. This is the key data about the apartment sizes and income tiers. A majority of these apartments would be reserved for people at what we call extremely low income, earning below 30% of the area median income, 33 of the 50 units, and of those 25 would have a homeless preference. And then we would also have some units available for folks who are kind of in the middle income tier, who might be working at a kind of entry-level job. Next. The staffing on site that we plan to have is a live-in person, a full-time resident services coordinator, a full-time property manager, and then assorted supporting staff. Next. This is our timeline going forward. We submitted our request to the trust in October. We are submitting a full funding package application to the state in February. They usually make awards the following summer. We would typically close on all of the financing in the next early spring, January. And we think we have about 10 to 11 months of renovations in the building, leading to a lease up of apartments in really probably early 2027. Next. So we made a request to the trust for $250,000. After discussion, the trust decided to recommend $100,000. This amount is half of 1% of the total project budget, and it equates to a trust contribution of $2,000 per affordable housing unit. Next. The trust, in exchange for this recommendation, asked for 2 things. One is that 30% of the apartments be subject to local preference, meaning someone who lives in Hadley, works for the Hadley government, works for a business in Hadley, or has kids in the Hadley school system, as well as perpetual affordability. So instead of having the usual 30 or 45-year restriction from the state, this would have indefinite, sometimes known as 99-year affordability. What we are seeking now is a written commitment. We're not seeking the cash. We'd need funds when we get to closing, which is anticipated in January of 2026. Next. This is hard to see. So we had a question about how does this kind of compare to what we've received from other communities for affordable housing development? And the short answer is it's significantly lower on a per unit basis and on a total basis than what we receive for other housing developments, granted in larger communities. And I think that's it. Next. Yep, that's it. I'm happy to take questions.
I'm also on the Affordable Housing Trust Committee, so I have no questions, but certainly open that up to my fellow board members.
I've been paying attention to this as it goes along at the various meetings. I have no questions.
I also like the way it's moving forward and have no questions.
So I've got a couple. As far as the Hadley preference, how is that implemented, I guess, going in reality, in the real world? Yep.
Sure. So we typically have many, many, many more applicants than we have apartments. We do a lottery, which is just what it sounds like, random selection. And then you go in your place down this lottery list. And if you have a local preference, we'll set aside some units, 30% of units, where if you have that priority, you're going to bump ahead of people who might be above you on the lottery who don't have that priority. Again, there's opportunity for everybody because most of the units won't have a local preference, but the town felt like it was important to have some local preference.
And that's in forever along with the affordable aspect of things,
No, it is for the initial lottery.
just for the initial.
Yes. And when towns have tried to get it as being perpetual, the state has not permitted that. So Amherst asked for that in our last project and they were denied. I would also mention that local preference is something that the town has to demonstrate the need for. It's not hard to do, but you do need to write something to the state with some data saying, here's why we think there's a need for local preference. I could assist with that activity.
And just for the benefit of the board, if you didn't watch the meeting too, you know, we had a local business owner who happened to be present and talked about how many of their employees would easily qualify for the financial aspects of these units, and that many of them do have difficulty finding housing. So from a business standpoint, they certainly supported the concept of a local preference and the project in general.
That's all.
All right, Amy, do you have any questions before?
Mine was just the same as David.
Okay, and Amy, just
Really just about
your audio's cutting out a bit, so I don't know if maybe we
Turn off the video.
Turn off
want
the
to turn off the video. No, it's not ideal, but. Okay. Shell, I can see you have your hand up, and I'm at a disadvantage, just so you know, because
mine was exactly the same as David's.
Yeah.
Just about local preference and making sure that that's possible.
Shell, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, my comment is that I strongly support this project. My question to Laura is why only 4 fully accessible units? Couldn't the whole ground floor be set up that way?
So that's a good question. It could potentially, I mean, the 4 accessible units are actually scattered on all the floors of the building per the local law about not congregating people. But so we start with 4 because this building is relatively new and has an elevator and entry on grade and wide hallways. It's a pretty reasonable thing to think that we could adapt units if we have increased demand for wheelchair accessible units. Because we'll have all the units will be what they call visitable, meaning if you're a visitor in a wheelchair, you can access the building, you can access any of the common spaces, and you can visit your friend in their apartment.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm not seeing anybody else, so entertain a motion,
I move we approve the $100,000.
ratify the vote of.
Ratify the vote of the housing, Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, motion made by Jane. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Randy. Okay, roll call vote then.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Parsons,
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We really
You're welcome.
appreciate your support.
And then we do have one other item to take up related to the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm hoping Bill, yes, perfect. Bill Dwyer is on because he was the scrivener for our meeting. So, Bill, could you read the vote that we took relative to the $20,000?
We voted affirmatively on the motion to commit up to $20,000 to contract with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to support the work of the Smart Growth Steering Committee upon the consideration that other available funds be expended first. And that vote was 5 in favor and 1 absent.
And so again, the goal here is to keep the Smart Growth Committee working with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. If all of the tea leaves line up, there will be grant money available come January and some funds available in the planning board budget. So this is really a stopgap just to make sure that we don't run into any issues and the project comes to a halt.
So Bill, what's the definition of other available funds?
And I think Jim's got his hand up.
So in this case, the available funds are the pending grant application that PVPC filed on our behalf with one of the state alphabet agencies. And the other available funds, subject to a future vote of the planning board, would be some of our planning services. We have a budget line item for planning services with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which we could redirect to this. Now, it's only, I think, a $10,000 item and is partially expended already. So it would not be a big ticket item. But that, I believe Kyle said that the application to the state agency was for 22.5, and we might have up to 5,000 in planning assistance funds at the planning board level, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like I've been told that that's Andy Morris Friedman with a hand up. Is that right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I'm the vice chair of the Hadley CPA committee. Almost all of these projects, planning, town percentage, all those things are all possible to use CPA money if the proper committees come to us in advance and town meeting approves them. So please, in the future, give us a call. And we'd be happy to work with you and use CPA money to replenish some of these funds, to do some of the planning, and possibly even the actual conversions.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody else? No?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay, if not, entertain a motion to, well, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the up to $20,000 as outlined by Mr. Dwyer.
Second,
Okay, motion made by David, seconded by Jane. Roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes,
Nevin Smith,
yes,
and Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, everybody. Our next appointment, we're just running a little bit late, not too bad. Library departmental update and the roof report. I understand that Patrick is not with us this evening, but we have Joanne Knetsny and Lynn Latham from the trustees, as well as
John.
consultant
We have
who's also
two-
online.
Okay, let me just sort of start. I am Lynn Latham. I am Chair of the Library Trustees. I'm sorry Patrick isn't here. Fellow trustees Joanne Konitsky and Jack Sykowski are here. Online are Mary Rose and Susan Mooring. In addition, we have two representatives from Gale Engineering, which is the company from whom you have heard before and who has conducted the examination of the roof. The project manager is John Kropetsky, who is the person that spoke with you last time. And we also have Brian Neely, who is a vice president and senior associate at the firm. What they last did was what you had suggested we move ahead with, and to do the actual roof exploratory cuttings. And they did 17 or 18 of those, and their findings for each of them are documented in the report that they provided. I hope that you all have a copy of that. This evening, I have asked if they would please provide more a summary and overview and what possible options we might have to move forward. And with that, I will turn this over to John. One last thing. If we still have time, I do have a very brief PowerPoint to show you how fabulous the library is doing. If you don't have so many questions that you take up all the time, but the roof clearly takes priority.
Thank you.
I don't see a roof attachment. I see the
yeah.
utilization report in there.
That was all that was provided to me.
Okay.
I think John might have the roof portion.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. Can you all hear me? All right, so at any point, if you'd like, I can share my screen and you can follow along if that makes sense. I will do that right. I will do that right now. Screen. Okay. Please confirm. I'm just looking at one other thing. Sorry, I have 3 screens. Sometimes I have to make sure I have the right one. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, so yeah, again, my name is John Karpeski. I've been the project manager from Gale to assist the library to date, handling most of the ins and outs with this project. Thank you for having me again. Last we spoke, I believe it was August 21st, where we introduced or summarized our initial visual only report, which is dated July 3rd. That is what's pulled up on the screen now. In summary, that report was, again, visual only. We went on the roof from lifts around the building, used a drone and also some infrared imagery just to try to get a feel for what might be going on with the buckling asphalt shingles. This report has a lot of information in it if you have not read it yet. In summary from this report, there was a lot of unknowns that we were, without making test cuts at the time, there were a lot of unknowns identified within this report with respect to what were the materials used within the roof, how does the general construction of the roof compare to the as-built drawings that were provided to us for reference, and so on and so forth. As Lynn had mentioned, we were contracted again to do investigative or exploratory openings in the roof, and we did do 17 test cuts in the roof to start identifying how the roof was constructed and how we may be able to compare the way it's constructed to the as-builts and start filling in those holes and those blanks that were noted in our initial report. So that brings us to this report. It's a pretty detailed report. Again, I'm not going to go page by
Excuse me,
page.
John,
Yes,
I'm sure you are sharing what you intended to share.
let me double check.
We can only see the left side of the PowerPoint.
It looks like the table of contents or something.
Yeah, let me go ahead and change that to my screen. Hold on
And
one
can you
second.
make it bigger, please?
I can certainly do that. Let me just make sure I have the correct layout here selected. Apologize, I'm just trying to see the option to share my entire screen instead of sharing the application. Give me 1 second to figure this out. Okay, I see what happened. Drag this over. Drag this over. Stop share. I'm going to reshare this and hopefully this works for everybody. Right. Is this now is this better? Can you see the big yellow rectangle I just drew over this report by chance?
Yes.
Okay, and you can see me zooming in and out.
Yep.
Yes, zoom in.
I will certainly do that. All right. So this supplemental report dated November 19th is the latest and greatest. This includes those exploratory test cuts in the roof. There were 17 of openings that we made, and those are very clearly documented. The locations of which are documented in Appendix C, which I'll flip to quickly, just to give you an idea on where we hopped around the building to make these openings. So as I zoom in here, this is the roof plan of the building. And all these rectangles here identify where we made the openings. The blue comments identify where wet materials were found beneath the asphalt shingles. And the purple comments identify where test cuts were made at visible buckling asphalt shingle locations. In general, again, our goals were to identify the existing construction and also try to start filling in the blanks as to what may be contributing to the buckling asphalt shingles. So this roof plan is Appendix C. It's a good reference as you read the report to fall back and just to see where we're talking about. The numbers of these openings align with the numbering of the openings in our report. So for instance, if you want to know what happened in field of roof test cut number 5, this is where it was taken. It syncs up with the report. Okay. In general, the roof from bottom to top is constructed as such. Starts with a steel deck, 5/8 inch gypsum baseboard, a self-adhering vapor barrier membrane, or so vapor retarder or vapor barrier membrane, 2 layers of rigid insulation, polyiso insulation, and typically what we observed is that the joints were staggered and that the average thickness or the typical thickness of the insulation is 6.5 inches. Above that is 5/8 inch plywood sheathing. Then you have roofing underlayment, and then you have your asphalt shingles. So the way this report is set up is this is a typical observation. Then as we go forward and describe each of the test cuts, I'm not going to go in detail right now. I can always fall back and answer questions. But the rest of the report is laid out to start identifying conditions that may vary from those typical conditions and any other conditions that may vary from what those as-built drawings are showing. I'll do a couple of examples. So this particular example, test cut number 5, which I had noted briefly when I hopped to the roof plan, we start seeing, so this is a good image. It just shows the cross section of the roof with all the different materials I had identified. As we folded over the folded over the plywood, we did notice that there was insulation adhesive on the backside. That might clue us that instead of just loose laid insulation and plywood, that it was likely some kind of pre-manufactured insulation bonded to plywood board or a nail-based insulation that was used as the top insulation layer. Just an observation that was that may be a little bit different than the typical observations observed above. I'm going to flip now kind of page by page and just try to draw your attention to some of the other highlights that we saw from our test cuts. And again, trying to be as pretty brief here so I can get to the discussion at the end. One test cut here coincided with the scattered, with one of the buckling asphalt shingle locations, a field of roof. And what we found is a wrinkle in the underlayment as we took the shingles off, as outlined by this yellow line. Then we open that underlayment up and we notice that it is aligned with the joints in the plywood sheathing. Upon closer review, we saw that there was some rusted pancake head roofing screws. These screws located here. We also noticed that there was one underdriven pancake head screw, and there were some apparently overdriven pancake head screws that effectively brought the plywood downwards and didn't have a complete flush surface on the surface of the plywood. So this particular instance appears that the buckling aligned with an uneven substrate being the way that the plywood was installed and or just the unflushness of that plywood, right? It's a unique condition, different than the typical conditions observed earlier. Here's another view of how there's that depression in the plywood and it's not a flush condition, and that aligned with the wrinkling. Skipping ahead, let me do an example of a wet area here. Test cut 17 coincided with an area that we previously identified from our infrared scanning as to potentially being an anomaly, an area that had a different color pattern from our IR scan or infrared scan, which can often suggest that maybe there's moisture in the system. So we went to that location, opened it up, and did confirm that where the anomaly existed at this particular location, that there were wet insulation and plywood materials below. So far, I've just kind of zoomed in on some of the field of roof test cuts to show some different things. We did test cuts at and this is where I'm going to skip to the roof plan real quick, because I don't know how much terminology folks are familiar with in terms of roofing. I'll try to be brief. But we did test cuts along the eave. The eave is the downslope edge of the roof, where oftentimes you'll find gutters. Right, here's a test cut at the eave. We did test cuts along the rake. A rake is the side edge of the roof that goes upslope. We also did test cuts at the clear story, where you have the lower roof meeting the clear story rising wall, where you have those windows and glass fiber reinforced panels. And other details around the cheek wall here, another rising wall condition, a rake rising wall condition. We did valleys, we did ridges. So our goal was really just to start diving into all the different details of this roof, and again, comparing them to the as-built conditions. Okay, so as I use terms eave, rake, ridge, if you're not familiar with them, if we have time, I'm happy to dive in more later. But after we go past the field of roof openings, we start hitting those detail locations. In summary, the construction that we saw generally aligned with the as-built drawings. There were some subtle differences. Anywhere we had an eave or rising wall or ridge, one thing that we weren't able to fully understand is if that roof vapor barrier tied in with the wall vapor barrier. That's something that you want to typically have so that you're creating that complete vapor seal from the roof to the wall. It's also generally shown in the drawings that way. In order for us to really have been able to confirm that, we would have had to take siding materials apart, soffit materials, and with the limited time on site and the contractor's ability to make those openings, there's still that little bit unknown with the roof vapor barrier tying with the wall vapor barrier. So if I mentioned that, so this example here was done at a rake and eave corner. We did confirm the presence of a vapor barrier in this particular photo on the right, but given all the plywood materials and the gutter and all these other components, there just wasn't enough time to be able to open that complete picture up to see that tie-in. And we'll see that as a little bit of an unknown still at some of the other details. But generally, again, from what we saw, aligned mostly with the as-built drawings. Other things that didn't align is the as-built drawings called for spray foam insulation. That almost all of the transitions of this rigid insulation, all the end conditions of the rigid insulation. At the eave, we saw a pretty consistent gap, which suggests that there's, it's not as tight as the drawings show from a thermal resistance standpoint. We also see that at the ridge, there was gapping in the insulation. There was no spray foam insulation found anywhere. We saw it at the valleys and we saw it at the hips. So that's a pretty consistent observation. That just means that the thermal insulation, albeit they did a pretty good job in having the two layers and having the joints in the layer staggered, there's not that continuity at these detail locations. So that's one, I guess, deficiency that doesn't align with the as-built drawings. Yes.
Can you speak to the hot roof situation on the library?
The term of hot roof?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll get to that in a second. I'm just going to finish the general observations here. I guess related to that, what I'll say is even before we made test cuts into the roof, we knew that there was no ventilation provisions on this roof because you could visibly see that there was no ridge vent at the top and there was no soffit venting or other types of intake ventilation provisions that would allow air to flow in and underneath the asphalt shingles and then back out. So we already knew that. The test cuts also showed that there was no dedicated air space underneath the plywood and the top insulation layer. So it just, I guess, further confirmed that even in the typical cross section of the roof, there was no dedicated air gap. That becomes important. I'll get to the reasons why in a second. Here's a photo of the gap of insulation at the ridge. And I believe two of the openings that aligned with anomalies were wet when we did our test cuts. So Like I said, there's a lot to cover in this report. I'm going to kind of skim over. There was one area where there was cracked solder at one of your, there's not that much metal panel roofs or metal panel areas on this roof. But this solder joint was cracked where that metal, soldered metal roof exists. So just an area to keep an eye on in case leakage does occur there. This is a deficiency that could result in leakage if there's a breach through this metal panel material. One other thing that we did before I get into the discussions and opinions is hazardous material testing. Regardless of the age of the building, albeit being around 5 years old, the way the standards are written is you still need to have hazardous material testing done if you're doing any demolition activities in the state of Massachusetts. As such, we retained a consultant, a hazmat consultant, to sample all the different materials discovered and exposed during all the different types of materials exposed during these test cuts. In short, all the samples collected, all 87 samples, came back as no asbestos detected, which is often an acronym of NAD. So at the end of this report, Appendix D is the more in-depth hazardous materials report from our consultant. So unless there's questions there at the end, I'm just gonna, everything came back as no asbestos detected. So that's good news. It's what you would hope for a building, only 5 years old. So discussing in opinions. So as I started off by summarizing what we did for our first visual report, the July 3rd visual report kind of had a bunch of different talking points in bullets. I kept that same order in this report with the goal of trying to just make it clear what additional supplemental information we got from this effort. Example, these bullets are things that may impact the or that may contribute to the condition of an asphalt shingle buckle, right? So it could be that the way the contractor installed it could have created it. So as we went into our openings, we saw that a 6-nail pattern in the shingles that we exposed would suggest that that's a high wind attachment. And in general, our opinion is the way the shingles were installed were not a direct contributor to the or were not a contributor to the asphalt shingle buckling. The next thing, the uneven deck substrate. We did see examples of the uneven deck substrate located at a buckle. So from our observations here, we do believe that having uneven plywood, and whether it's caused by overdriven, underdriven fasteners, some other construction controls that may not have been in place during the installation, like if the material was wet when they installed it or not dry enough and not protected. We can't really opine on that because we weren't there to see the installation, nor do we have that documentation during construction to be able to opine too much on how the contractor conditioned those materials. But we did see evidence of uneven plywood aligning with buckling asphalt shingles. That's what this bullet is talking about. Movement within the roof assembly can be a contributor if the materials aren't able to resist wind and there's other movement within the thing that if there's movement in the system beneath the asphalt shingles, it's going to cause the asphalt shingles to move. So this section talks about potential impacts that we saw from our test cuts. In general, we didn't do high in-depth, wind calculations, and generally speaking, let me just see one more thing here. We, even though we didn't see the orientation of the boards, we do think that the orientation was proper in that the long edge of the plywood was parallel with the eave. So even though that's a big blurb there, but there wasn't too much to add of movement in the roof assembly. That brings us to the point that was raised: lack of ventilation provisions. Our findings don't change there. We already knew there wasn't ventilation. Why is that important? There's industry standard associations example, NRCA, National Roofing Contractors Association, and some other, ARMA is the Asphalt Roofing Manufacturer Association. They have publications out there that talk about the importance of having ventilation under asphalt shingles and how inadequate ventilation can contribute to buckling. The other thing that we often see is asphalt shingle manufacturers typically, if they don't require, they highly recommend or highly suggest the inclusion of ventilation underneath the asphalt shingles, particularly in regions that, as we are, where we have heating required or cool, very cold weather seasons. This particular project used GAF shingles. Patrick forwarded, after we gave this report, we received a copy of the warranty. The warranty in the fine print does indicate that if inadequate ventilation is discovered or is determined to be a cause of issues, it's not covered under the warranty. So that becomes important, right? We know we don't have ventilation. It was designed that way, intentionally it seems, and we have the manufacturer in their warranty indicating that any issues caused by lack of ventilation or inadequate ventilation is not covered by them under their warranty. We also have the publications that talk about the importance of ventilation. So this is definitely an important topic to think about as we continue our discussions. We did see a vapor barrier on the roof, although we couldn't fully confirm its tie-in with the wall due to the limitations that we had with the time on site and not really digging into all the different siding materials. We did at least observe it. So if you have a discontinuity there, there's that potential of humidity getting into the roof system at these perimeter conditions. So there's something to keep an eye on depending on the path at which the town and Hadley Public Library decides to proceed with this roof. And we'll get there in a second on the options. And this final one, to go hand in hand with the importance of the vapor barrier, is humidity or moisture in the roof assembly can be a cause of buckling. We did see areas of wet insulation, areas of wet plywood, aligned with those anomalies that we initially saw from our IR scans. There may be additional humidity in that roof depending on some of those conditions on the continuity of the vapor barrier. So some other things to note, the typical insulation thickness was 6.5. Per code in Massachusetts, you need an R30 insulation for above roof deck insulation. 6.5 inches achieves that. Even at the low thickness at 5 3/4, we don't believe that, or we believe that the minimum code required thermal resistance was provided on this roof. So that's just an important finding. One other thing we saw with the clear story rising walls, which was an area reported to have seen leakage in the past, is that a lot of the sealants installed between the GFRC panels, the glass fiber reinforced concrete panels, and the windows, and generally the sealants around the windows are generally in poor condition and are in need of some work. And I know the library had some sealant work done prior to us coming back out there in October, but even with our observations in October, there's some sealant work that needs to occur still on those rising walls, on the clear story walls. And then there was previous and actually more recent active water infiltration at the cheek wall. The cheek wall is that rising wall as you have the slope coming up along the rake. We were notified after this report, and actually I believe it was last week, that water had gotten in again, which could be attributed to the way the step flashing materials are constructed. We talk about that a little bit more detail in our prior report. With this new information, we still maintain these findings. Buckling asphalt shingles could reduce the overall service life of your roof system. The reason that can be the case is if you have a buckled shingle, shingles often have a adhesive strip on the downslope edge. If that buckle is projecting enough in that shingle to break that seal, that could allow a pathway for wind or wind-driven rain to get up underneath the shingles. If the shingles also are seeing a repeated pattern of buckling and flexing and flattening, that kind of fatigue can also weaken the asphalt shingles over time. So that's where the first bullet point comes in. The conditions that we observed in both instances appear to have worsened since GAF came out and did a warranty inspection initially prior to our involvement. They gave a very brief report, and we talk about that in more detail in the first Gale report. But what they're saying in that initial report is not fully accurate anymore, because they were really focusing on the lower sloped roof and how the water was coming off and dripping down onto that roof, causing some of the issues. They also attributed the damage to being in those lower slope roof areas only. Now we come out, we see that the buckling is not only in those areas, it's scattered around other areas of the roof as well. And it appears to be more severe than what GAF saw. So that becomes important in case the town of Hadley or Hadley Public Library wants to get GAF involved again for another warranty inspection. We don't know what they'll find. They may comment on the buckling. I'm sorry, they may comment on the lack of ventilation. They may comment on other things. It's just what is out there now doesn't align with their initial report. There may be some additional information that may be worthwhile should they come back out and do another inspection. I touched on the clear story sealants. If not yet, well, we know some work was done, but these really should be looked at again, and potentially an additional sealant replacement effort should be looked at a little bit closer at those clear story walls. To date, we haven't opined on the responsibility of why this is happening. When I say responsibility, it's the original construction team. We're not pointing fingers at this time. We're just reporting on what we're seeing and letting the documentation and our observations kind of speak for themselves a little bit. The other thing to note is we've really been provided with very limited project documentation to date. So as more project documentation, becomes available, there may be, changes in some of those opinions. So we don't talk about who's responsible for why this is happening at this time. That has not changed. And then possible resolutions. If you're replacing the roof system, you can either go with a vented system with asphalt shingles. It's going to require heavy modification of those perimeter roof details. But you could also rip the asphalt shingles off and install a covering that does not rely so heavily on ventilation. Things like sheet metal roofs, whether it's standing seam or other type, natural slate, albeit expensive, it's an option. They also have synthetic shingle materials like synthetic slate, synthetic cedar shingles made out of, for lack of a better term, plastic materials, but better than plastic. That's what they look like to the touch. And then you could also go with a single ply membrane, and there are systems out there that you can heat weld on faux seams. So there's options for this roof if you're considering replacing it, whether it's an unvented system, which is what you have up there currently, or modifying the roof to become a vented system for asphalt shingles. Two other topics, and then I'll kind of wrap up and open it up for questions. If the ultimate decision is that the roof stays, we do suggest that a more in-depth infrared survey be performed with the goal of identifying those anomalies and potentially digging into those roof areas and replacing wet materials. Wet insulation loses its thermal resistance pretty, it goes from an R30 to closer to 0. So if the roof is staying, we suggest doing some remediation of the areas that are failed and also looking closer at some of those perimeter conditions that might be contributing to the leakage that's happening. If determined that the roof is to be replaced, the next reasonable step, in our opinion, would be proceeding with a schematic design to start seeing how some of these roof perimeter details may be impacted by the various options I mentioned, and to also start looking at order of magnitude cost estimates for the various options to help Town of Hadley and Hadley Public Library make their decision on a roof replacement that would fit their needs. So with that, I guess, Lynn, is there anything else you'd want to touch on quickly before we turn it over to questions?
No, please go ahead and ask any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Yes. You showed us a picture of metal roofing and I believe you said the joints were soldered. I assume that's lead, is that correct?
The metal material itself appears to be either a lead coated copper or a tin zinc coated copper. We didn't obtain the submittals for the project, so we could not confirm as such. But the lead, the solder itself oftentimes is composed of lead. It can be lead free or minimal lead, but I hope that
Yeah.
answers the question.
I'm not concerned about the hazardous material. It just, you showed an obvious breach in that solder and said that if water were to enter, it seems to me that water is going to enter. So that needs to be addressed right away, in my opinion. And then question number 2 I have is, if I understood correctly, the roof was intended to be metal originally, and at the last minute, and I'm not blaming anybody for anything, but at the last minute, it changed to asphalt. So is this roof designed to have put metal on it, and then when the asphalt shingles were put on it, they did not alter the design to accommodate that correctly?
I can't speak for the design team that designed this roof or the discussions that had occurred. Partly because we haven't been provided that degree of design development documentation and to be able to, review how these decisions were made. From what I've heard, it was intentional to install what they're deeming a quote hot roof or an unventilated asphalt shingle roof. And there have been discussions on metal panel or asphalt, and one of which was an alternate, and they proceeded with the asphalt shingle. But I guess that's as much as I can really say right now, without those original folks involved being here to chime in on that question.
Just to clarify too, though, one of the options that John is suggesting the town could consider is a standing seam metal roof, which wouldn't require venting. So you would go over the existing system.
Yeah, I understand all that. My concern is that if the installers did not take into consideration that they should not have done what they did with the asphalt shingles, and then we get stuck having to pay for it, I don't think that's quite appropriate.
Understood.
Randy, if I can just very briefly summarize the process. I was a member of the building committee, as were Jack and Molly. Initially, we had hoped to put a metal roof on, and I believe the building was designed that way. When the initial estimates came in, it seemed pretty clear that we would not be able to afford to put the metal roof on as intended. And that was then changed to asphalt. Whether or not there was a discussion at the time about having an unventilated roof, right now, no one has a recollection of that. And we have not finished looking at some of the recordings and minutes from that time period in order to ascertain. However, at the December 10th trustee meeting, the architect attended via Zoom, and it was my assessment in his comments that he very intentionally installed an unventilated roof deck.
Heard that. He was. He was
Yeah.
Really, this is what we did and we knew it was okay.
And we knew it was okay. Well, how,
It worked in other places. It's not the only one we have designed, he
Okay.
said.
okay.
Any other questions for the consultants?
I think good catch on the lack of spray foam that our OPM apparently didn't catch.
And Amy, do you have any questions for the consultants or for the library trustees?
I don't.
Okay. Okay, so then I would imagine, we have the information, people may want to go back and reread the report too, now that it's been described and some of the acronyms and things are more clear as to what exactly we're reading. And then I would imagine we're going to be, talking about next steps.
Can I ask someone to send out a copy of that? Because we don't have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Send it.
John, before you go, just can you repeat for this roof? Where the asphalt shingles have to be removed before metal roof goes on?
Yes, so our current opinion is yes, the asphalt shingle should be removed. Albeit the code in some instances allows covering at least recovering a roof once. We think that there's enough benefit in removing the asphalt shingles to expose the underlying materials to look for wet materials, improperly installed or attached materials, and uneven materials. So we
Doesn't
think it's
involve already.
beneficial.
I agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm sure we're gonna be in touch, so.
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation tonight.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Brian, very much.
Thanks for having us.
You have
and
3.5 minutes.
All right, and Lynn, you wanted to take just a few minutes?
I can have 2 minutes. Jennifer gives me 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna do this real fast. Jennifer, can you please share Patrick's PowerPoint? This was sort of kind of what was supposed to be discussed tonight, that we were invited as a department. And so what we would like to show you are some data that Patrick put together for the years 2019, 2022, and 24. And the reason that those years were chosen is 2019 was our last year in the Goodwin, 2022, was our first full year open in the new building, and 24 is the most recent fiscal year for which we have information. If you can go to the slide with the yellows, several along the way. This just shows you real quick what patron visit count is and has been for
I
these.
can't read the numbers on the bottom. Can you make it
I
bigger?
can't make it bigger, Jane, I'm sorry. It's
5, 10,
5,000, 10,000, 15,000.
20, 25, 30. Yeah, it's in two different.
So between 2022 and 24, we have had a 24% increase. I will just mention very, very quickly that these are individual hand counts of the people who come in. Occasionally, staff members at the front desk are away from the desk and they might miss someone. So if anything, they are slight undercounts rather than exaggerations. Next one, please. Items that have been checked out. There's a 9.6% increase in the last 2 years. Next. We did not have a meeting room in the Goodwin, and we have seen exponential growth as people understand what is available. We use the local history room, the small meeting room, and the large meeting room. Next. This tells you how many more Hadley residents have signed up for library cards. Not just the total number, because we will issue cards to anyone who is eligible for a CW Mars card. But this is the number. There is 14% more folks who have signed up. Next. This is probably one of the most significant increases. We have been able to do a lot more programming with the space that we have and the staff that we have. And you will see that while the programs have increased, the number of participants has grown even more. Next. This is the one that doesn't show growth. This is our staffing level. Since the Goodwin, we have added several more hours so that we have now 4 full-time equivalents. Next. We are lucky that there are a lot of people who want to volunteer at the library. I am one of them, and that's not my trustee role. That's other stuff I do there. And we have taken advantage wherever possible. I will tell you, as someone who has worked in libraries and been associated with libraries, I've been a trustee for 9 years, not just here. Hadley uses volunteers to do tasks that are more often done by paid staff members than just volunteers. Next slide. Just a real quick snapshot of the budget in those 3 selected years. And the very last slide shows you that in response to the increased number of programs and other activities at the library, the Friends have really stepped up. They support programs. They also support specific items like museum passes and the subscription to the New York Times. They have been extremely generous and hardworking, and we are fortunate to have such a dedicated crew. I'm sure that was more than 2 minutes, and Jennifer's going to slap my wrist, and I'm sorry, but it was as quick as I could do.
But you did a good job, Lynn.
Thank you.
Yes, very well.
Are there any
Take a breath.
questions? Jennifer has the PowerPoint, and I'm sure she will share it with you if you would like to look at this in more detail. Or if there is anything else, any other numbers or information that we can give to you. The bottom line is the library is a treasure, and people in town know it. And so do a lot of other folks as well.
Thank
And I
you.
hope you all know it.
And a big shout out to all the volunteers who keep that, make it work. So,
It's
yeah.
pretty incredible.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have an appointment. I'm just a couple of minutes late for Pride Operating LLC submitted a change of manager amendment for their off-premise wine and malt license. Jennifer, do you want to address this? Oh, I see Attorney Channing.
Yes, so with your office, with the licensing, everything is in order. The fire chief has informed me today that there has been some problems with some compliance in relation to the gas station portion of this. And he just wanted to make y'all aware of that. That there was a compliance issue. I was checking with him to see if Pride has complied at this time, but he has not gotten back to me. That might be because he's over there. But he did want y'all to be aware of this problem. And James Channing is here, who is the attorney for Pride, who we know very well and we've seen a lot, and he can tell you more about it.
Is the issue of compliance pertinent to what we're looking at, or is it something different?
It has to do with the gas station portion of it, the gas safety. It does not have a direct relation to the alcohol, other than is the same company at the same location.
Okay.
And he has just said, Mike has said he's spoken to the regional manager, and the regional manager will be taking care of it.
Okay, so tonight we're just being asked to approve the change of
Yes,
manager.
he just asked that y'all be made aware of it.
Okay. All right, anything we need to know?
And James is here to tell you about the new manager.
Good evening. I appreciate your time. Again, I found out within the past hour that the concerns of fire chief will address those immediately. I don't think it's relevant to the request before you today, which is just a proposed change in manager for the liquor license. It's an off-premises license 15, which is beer and wine. Obviously, if you're be in a position to postpone or continue the hearing until you hear from the fire chief, I absolutely respect that. But at least like the opportunity to present to you what we're requesting, and so you can meet the new proposed manager. I believe she was going to be present. I don't see her, so if you'll indulge me, I can give you a little bit of background with respect to her and why we feel she's an appropriate fit to be the approved license manager. Anazia has been with Pride for approximately a year. December 26th was her first day of 2023, so it's a week short of a year. Prior to that, she was a manager with a quick service restaurant, Dunkin' Donuts, in the area. She is tip certified, obviously understands and appreciates the responsibility of A, being a manager, but B, being a manager of a licensed premises. Obviously, I think notwithstanding the fire chief's concerns, one thing we do have is a high standard, and certainly IDing, whether it be tobacco or alcohol, is certainly something that we take very seriously, aside from every other obligation as well. So again, I defer to at this point whether action be taken on this, or you want to table it or postpone it until we hear from the fire chief with respect to his concerns over the fueling operations. But again, I just found out within the past hour. I can tell you we're addressing them, but I absolutely respect the fact that you may want additional information on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have no.
problem.
We need a manager.
Yeah.
I move we accept the change of manager.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jane, seconded by David. All of those in favor, roll call vote, Jennifer.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank
You too, thanks.
Bye-bye. Okay, just about 7:10, folks.
Most of that.
7, 8,
I'll start talking.
7, 8.
Sure, why don't you start?
Okay, so Applebee New England has submitted a change of manager for their on-premise all alcohol license. The new manager will be Rachel Doubleday, and I see that she is on. There's no problems with this license going forward. They've already submitted their renewals. Everything's been processed through, so this would just be the next step.
Okay.
And
Rachel, anything you want to say? Oh,
Can't hear
you're
you.
muted, yeah.
I believe Rachel's at the restaurant. She was here earlier,
Okay,
but I think she's at the restaurant now.
okay,
And with the pouring rain, I don't blame her for not coming back to us.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to go ahead and accept the change of manager. Sure.
I'm unmuted. I'm so sorry. It was a struggle for me. Hi, how are you?
Okay, so there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Jennifer's had to wait
Just-
1 minute.
Just 1 minute. Maybe Rachel could tell you about her
No.
experience or something.
Mhm.
But we need 7:10 since that's.
Sure,
what she-
yeah,
So
that's
Helen,
fine. I've been with Applebee's for years, and this is my 4th location that I've been the general manager of. So I've held licenses in Greenfield, Westfield, and Holyoke. And then all the managers on premise are ServSafe alcohol certified every 3 years. And then in order to work in the dining room here, you need it's about a 4-day course through Applebee's for serving alcoholic beverages responsibly, and we recertify for that every September. So
okay, great.
And it is
Perfect.
7:10.
All right, now I'll make a motion to accept the change of manager.
Second.
Okay, motion made by David and seconded by Randy. Jennifer, roll call vote.
Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rachel.
thank you.
Okay, we have 5 minutes before our next appointment, so I'm going to jump to the consent agenda. Let's see. So tonight we have approval of minutes from November 20th and December 4th of this year. We have a request for 1-day liquor licenses from the Friends of the Council on Aging. Following dates, January 10th, March 14th, May 9th, July 11th, September 12th, November 14th. All of these events are being held from 6 to 8 p.m. At the Council on Aging Living Room. We also have a resignation by Justin Pelland from the Smart Growth Steering Committee and the Housing and Economic Development Committee. And then we have approval for a host community agreement with Hadley.
Motion to approve consent
have-
agenda.
Request. Can we bypass the fee for the Friends one-day license?
Oh, you want the fee, right, okay, so Jane is mentioning that in prior years, the board has elected to waive the fee that would normally be required because it's kind of in the family, so to speak. So, would anybody, well,
I'll make a motion to waive the fees for the one-day liquor license for the Council on Aging Friends.
okay, and I'll second that. We need to vote on that separately, correct? Right. So why don't we vote on that first?
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith,
Can I vote on this?
yes,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes. Okay, and then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jane, seconded by David. Roll call vote?
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gonna jump down to licensing renewals. We have a spreadsheet. Jennifer, this is cleanup for the,
I still have 4 that I have not heard from. These are all in good standing, everything's in place and ready for approval. And there should not be a conflict of interest because this is a class 1 license, so the entire board should be able to vote on it as a suite.
okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jennifer on these license renewals?
No.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Jane, seconded by Randy. Roll call vote?
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes, so I'm going to jump down to the select board meeting schedule. So you have the dates in front of you. So January, it's been moved to the 8th because the first Wednesday would be New Year's Day.
They don't want to provide us with a party.
No.
Who is they?
The town.
Mike and Jennifer?
Yeah. The chief administrator.
So we have the following dates. So January 8th and 22nd, February 5th and 19th, March 5th and 19th, April 2nd, 16th and 30th. May 1st is annual town meeting, May 7th, and then May 20th is the annual town election.
Don't we want to go through June so that we can have a complete 2025 fiscal year 24 schedule?
We usually wait after for the election just to make sure the new, in case there's a new member, then you want them to chime in.
So,
Okay, does anybody have any issues with those dates?
Motion to approve.
second.
Okay, motion made by Jane, seconded by Randy. Roll call vote?
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jennifer, could I just make an ask? The May 1st annual town meeting as well as the May 20th annual town election, could we make sure that those are posted to any calendar that's publicly available like now? I don't mean formally post, but the
I
dates are
can-
known.
I can post on the community events calendar. I will ask the town clerk, but since it's the official town meeting, actually, Molly, what I can do is I'll go ahead and post it.
Okay.
I can guarantee certain things are gonna happen. I can guarantee the entire select board's gonna be there, finance committee. So I'll go ahead and post the annual town meeting, I guess tomorrow.
Okay.
And that will be on the calendar and I'll talk to Jessica about putting the election on. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
It doesn't need to have any specifics, just the fact that it
It
exists and it's on
Yeah,
that date.
that's,
Right.
Yeah.
that's what the posting will
Yeah.
be.
Look at that, it's a miracle, 7:15, okay. So 7:15, we have a scheduled appointment with Rita Hackett, who's our intern, who's been working very hard on the service delivery plan. Mike, do you want to?
This is phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. She has had to talk to every single department head to gather information. And I know that David had done these in the past. She has gone much further in depth than, and I'm not putting David down. He, but she dug deeper and put together so much more information. I reviewed David's and I saw hers, and it's incredible. The amount of work that she did is just overboard for this, and she only put together like a 12-slide presentation, knowing that your meeting was packed tonight, so she took into consideration your time constraints as well. So I'm gonna turn it over to her and turn her loose because she's been a joy.
Thank you. My name is Rita Queenie Hackett. I am a graduate student at UMass Amherst, working towards my master's in public affairs. And I've been working here since September as your intern, putting together the service delivery plan, which is now a 75-page document that details every budgeted town department, board, and committee. It has their budget information, it has their legal mandate information, their organizational chart, mission statements, primary functions, everything like that. And I will go a little bit more in depth in this presentation. It is a snapshot of the whole document. I'm mostly going over kind of the highlights of the things that I added, but everything that I'm talking about, I did do for every department. So first, just in terms of the organization of the document, on the left side, I have the 2018 version, and on the right side, I have the 2024 version. I kept the organization fairly similar. It's still split into 5 sections. And each section is split into the individual budget series is within that. But then I made each department its own chapter, whereas in the 2018 version, the chapter is like the 100 series. Everybody's within that. I made it so it's easier to navigate by having each individual department have its own chapter, which is easily navigatable through the new table of contents that includes everybody. And this isn't the full table of contents. There's another page just cut off. Next, this is the evolution of what each chapter kind of looks like. This is the Town of Hadley overview, which is a lot less than the other departments have, but it's kind of an idea of what's included. So I added tables to multiple sections, including legal mandate and governance documents, just because, just to make it a little more easily readable and to make it easier to find exactly what you're looking for. It's a lot easier to do that when something's in a table form with a color on top of it than it is when it's in a bulleted list. So I changed that. And then also with the organizational structure, I added color to that as well. So it's also easily navigatable and easy to find within the document. So next, as an example, I'm using here the police and dispatch department to show the budgets. So I kept the budgets as a table as they were in the 2018 version. I added blue for the color recognition. And then I also worked with the treasurer to update the numbers for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. So those numbers should be accurate now. And then for every department, there's a breakdown of salaries and expenses. And for some departments, there's further breakdowns within that, but mostly it's just salaries and expenses. And then for each department that has multiple budgets, there's a breakdown of each individual budget, and then the salary and expense breakdowns within each of those budgets. So for police and dispatch, that's one example. DPW is another example, all those. So next, for legal mandates in the 2018 version, it was put together as a bolded list. I turned that into a table form where it shows the location where the mandate can be found, an overview of the language in that mandate, and then the specific language of the mandate. So you have all 3 available, and you can easily go to whichever one you're looking for at that time. To do this, a lot of the mandate information was present in the 2018 version. I did go through all of the old town meeting minutes, as well as some select board minutes and bylaws and the Massachusetts general laws to make sure that everything that was in place in 2018 is still in place today. And then I also went through to check everything since 2018 to update things that have been changed since 2018. For example, the treasurer becoming an appointed position rather than an elected position. I found like the places within the town meeting minutes or the bylaws that allowed for that to happen. And then I updated it with that language. So next, this is what the organizational charts looked like in 2018. It was bracketed to show the chain of seniority. And then I updated it to, instead of brackets, have lines, which I think makes it slightly clearer. I added color. And then also I added for departments where there is joint oversight between different departments, I added those positions in green so that it's clear that that position has oversight not only from that department, but from another department, but then it is too clear that
that the fire chief is not part of the police department, as in this example. It's just to show that somebody might have multiple departments looking over them, and they might be participating in both departments, but they're separate departments. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so next, each department has a list of employees. I updated that list working with HR to reflect the current employees of the town. In the 2018 version, each employee had their grade, their step, whether or not they're union, and their FTE included. And then each employee individually was written out as they might have had different grades and steps. For the new version, I took off the grade and step because since this document is updated over periods of years, the chances of the grade and step being the same by the end of this iteration's life cycle are very low. So it just seemed to make more logistical sense to take those off. And then I also updated the union information for each person according to the new unions that are being negotiated by the town, and then also FTE the same as well. So the document also includes a community profile. So it has an overview of the socioeconomic information of Hadley, bond ratings, estimated cherry sheet aid, revenue by source, tax classification, and Prop 22.5 levy capacity. So this is what it looked like in 2018. I updated it to look like this. I put it into a table format to make it, again, easily readable, easier to find the exact number that you're looking for. I worked with treasurers, assessors, and the town clerk to get these numbers updated to their most accurate form. And yeah. And so then just some other content changes that I made to the document. Since the town administrator and select board have been combined into a single budget since 2018, I combined the two into a single section on the document. So it was a synthesis of two departments' information into one thing. Next, I added a composition section for relevant boards and committees. Each of these composition sections included the number of members on each board or committee, how they're appointed, whether they're elected or who they're appointed by, and then the term length of each person. This wasn't present on the previous iteration. I added it for this one. I also added a human resources section from scratch to reflect the addition of the department since 2018. And then also since Hadley Media and the Hadley Public Library were still Hadley Public Access Television and the Goodwin Memorial Library in 2018, I updated those names and adjusted those sections accordingly to reflect the changes in those departments. And then also I worked with department heads, department members, and members of boards and committees to update departments, boards, and committees mission statements and primary functions for everything that they've done since 2018, since many of the departments have grown since then and their functions have changed substantially. So that's it. I'd like to thank all the departments who've helped me, Jennifer for being a great guide through this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, I love the graphics and the charts because that'll help us with our reporting structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Greatly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Could we actually email this out to the form of government committee?
Absolutely. I will send that out to them tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
And that would also Rita knows that we're actually going to utilize all of the work. And the other thing is this is a great document. Like so many times people say, well, I don't know what committees there are, or I don't understand what that department does. And this is nice one-stop shopping for people who are interested in learning more about it.
Can we send the full report? Has the full report been sent to the departments?
No.
Is that appropriate to do?
Well, well, first of all, it's on board docs right now, so everybody has access to it right this moment. But y'all, this is your report, so Rita was presenting to you. After y'all approve it, then we'll distribute it out to people.
That'd be great. And is this, where will this be on the town website?
It's gonna live on the select board page
On the
as where
select
the
board.
past one did.
Okay. Rita, thank you.
Yeah,
It's
of course.
great.
My pleasure.
Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to my next project,
Okay, good.
presenting to you in the future. So,
That's great.
yeah.
Okay, is anyone here for public comment this evening? There's nobody in the room. How about anybody on Zoom?
Nobody is indicating that they're here for public comment.
Okay. Then next on the agenda, we have, is that right? Yeah, we have water and sewer abatement. I see Kim is on. So there's a request to business at 458 to 59 Russell Street has requested a water and sewer abatement. Water for $148.02 and sewer $189.12. Scott?
Good evening.
And Andrew, you're gonna,
After we received the request for abatement, we did some research on this problem, and I feel that there should be no abatement. It's kind of a odd situation. I believe that this problem is between the owner and the occupant of the building. There's a problem after the meter where other people are tapped into this one line, and this occupant is paying that. So I don't really think it's necessarily a town problem or a metering problem. It's more of something within the building between the owner and occupants.
and could you, 458 to 459 Russell Street is,
Liquors 44.
just making sure. I didn't know if you were just hanging out, yeah. Okay, so this is Liquors 44 property.
And talking to Ken moving forward, we sent out some letters to the property manager and the owner, the occupant of the store, that we have decided that the bill would be now sent to the property manager so they can decide internally who pays what. It's kind of seems messy between the occupants in the town of who's being charged and who's not. It's kind of out of our control what happened after the meter.
Okay.
I think what Scott's saying makes absolute sense. What happens after the meter is we read the meters, and the town should stop their liability and responsibility there. And what happens after that, sort of like landlord tenant problems, some with heat, some with water, some with electricity. It's a landlord issue.
Andrew, since you're here, I'm sorry, Andrew Morrison.
Andrew Morrison from Lake School Board. This probably all started when they went to the Wi-Fi. They used to come into the store and they put their guns into. Our store has 3 different water meters, and the town would come in every quarter or whatever. And when they went to the Wi-Fi, they put the Wi-Fi on the outside of the building. And they must have done it for H&R, the Dollar Tree store. So they Wi-Fi'd them, but they didn't Wi-Fi us inside. Because we have 3, they're still there. So they sent the notice to the landlord, not telling me this. And I've been paying, it shows I paid over $7,500 over payments to the town. You've made your money through the other store that you paid. Dollar Tree and H&R has been paying, but I'm paying for theirs plus mine. So they came up with $7,557 that I've overpaid over the years. And to say there's a good faith in there that they build us good faith. I've paid good faith. Every time I get the bill, I'm paying, sending the money in. Assuming that I'm getting correctly charged, the meter's right in our store. So you check the meter and like, all right, what's this water coming from? Get a hold of the water department. I saw a guy which did a raise or something. So my water's twice as much here than it is in our team. So he came in the next day and looked, and he's like, you're getting charged for something else. So they, following Monday, they came in, went through. H&R Blocks had a leaking toilet. They've been closed since April, and their toilet's been leaking. So I'm paying for their leaky toilets. I don't know what Dollar Tree has leaky toilets as well. But I've been paying triple. Town hasn't lost anybody. And to give me a notice, the owner of the store would be better than giving the landlord. when you guys come and do like an inspection for the town. Police, or not the police, the fire department, inspector, they send me the inspection notice, I have to take care of it. If they sent me the water notice, I would probably take care of it versus sending it to the landlord. At that time, those landlord, their meeting office was down South Carolina. I'm in Hadley, so I think saying I shouldn't get an abatement for that. Disagree with it, but.
So I
Excuse
guess
me. Oh, sorry.
Go-
Sorry, Kimberly Pfeiffer. I'm on for the water abatement. If I can just add a little bit of context, if that's possible. So there were there were 3 meters that were located within Liquors 44 that were being read. There was a master meter, what how they referred to a master meter, that was not being read, but was a more updated, newer meter that had the radio read function. So there was a letter, an email sent by, at the time, Sharon Gifford on behalf of the Water Division that was sent to the property management at that time, letting them know that they would like to discontinue reading the 3 meters as they were all servicing one location, Liquors 44, and they plan to read just the one master meter. So she notified them that this was going to be the situation. The meters are still there, they're just not being read. So at that point, the email that was sent, which was in 2012, as long ago as that was, letting the management company know that their intention was to read this one master meter and to put the responsibility on the management company to notify the town if there was in fact any other tenant that was being serviced by this one master meter. There was no further communication from this management company. So they were advised that if there was another tenant being serviced, they needed to notify the town or they needed to rectify the plumbing defect ultimately. There was no further contact, so we went along billing the account, the master meter, to Liquors 44 in good faith that that meter was only servicing the one location. There was no other tenant being serviced by that master meter. Does that help at all?
Sure.
Yes, help me to understand this meter
Sure.
situation. There's 3 meters that are not being read. Is that correct? And there's
Yes.
1 master meter that is being read?
Yes.
And how do they, I mean, where do these 3 meters go that are not being read currently?
The 3 meters that are not being read are the 3 individual meters that were servicing Liquors 44. Liquors 44 had taken a large amount of space in that plaza. And my understanding is it was enough space where there could have been multiple tenants, which is why there were the multiple meters, but they were all servicing Liquors 44.
Okay, so 3 servicing Liquors 44, which are no longer being read. Now we have 1 meter that we're calling the master meter, and the assumption is that it is being utilized only by Liquors 44, but it seems to me that somewhere after this meter, the water is being diverted to the other 2 tenants. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
So when this email was sent by Sharon Gifford, she was advising the, at the time, Edens and Avant. She was notifying the gentleman, Glenn Grabor, who was the manager of the plaza at that time, that ultimately, let me find the quotation, I spoke to Glenn Grabor, the manager of the campus plaza from Edens and Avant, and told him what we plan to do. I also told him that if he can prove to us that there is another meter that we are currently reading that goes through the big meter, the master meter, that he should inform us and we would adjust the bill accordingly. The onus is now on Edens and Avant. So ultimately, she notified him that if there was any other tenant being serviced by this meter, that they needed to notify the town immediately, or they needed to rectify the situation. There was no further communication, so that one meter was billed to Liquors 44 without any knowledge that the water that was going through that meter was also being diverted to 2 other tenants. So, like I said, I mean, in good faith, the town has billed that account. Ultimately, this really is an issue between the landlord and the tenant. And the only way that I could see to remedy it, at least at this point, is I sent notification to the owner of record and the management company, advising them that until the defect is corrected, we are only going to be billing the one master meter, and it will be billed directly to the property owner, and it will be their responsibility to collect the portion owed by each one of the 3 tenants until they're able to correct the plumbing defect and change the plumbing setup so that there is not this issue continuing.
Andrew, have you had conversation with the property manager?
The new ones, they want to wait till I start in the H&R block section to redo the whole thing.
Because you're in the process of expanding.
Hoping to get approval. I think there's someone doing a walkthrough tomorrow. H&R's moving down.
Right.
They've run into some issues. Gotta have a walkthrough tomorrow. So we've been pushed back. But that's supposed to be hopefully rectified soon.
So, I mean, it does seem that this is a landlord.
But I can pay the landlord this $7,000. I was paying the town for the last 12 years. I was doing things like paid as well, my extra money for the town. The landlord's gone, they didn't receive any of that money. So now it's mindless to more or less take it on the chin for paying my bills on time. So I just think, yes, we all make mistakes. Some things don't come. No one lost money other than myself.
Or just that you paid somebody else's bill.
No, they were paying their own bill. They paid their own bill. They have meters in their place too. So the Dollar Tree's paying their own. H&R's paying their own. I'm paying mine plus, because all the water main comes through my store. And then it shoots out, they follow lines. One shoots over to Dollar Tree, one shoots over to H&R. So they paid. I paid triple.
So somebody's paying for the same water twice, Scott?
So when it
We're
goes
only
through,
billing the master meter. The other meters would be reduction meters. We don't do reduction meters.
So
That would be owner.
what is a reduction meter?
If you have like a master meter, whatever, and whatever tenant uses after that, the bill would be split up to whatever tenant would subtract, or, you know, if 100 gallons of water went through the meter, the master meter, and then each suite would be able to tell through the other meters what was used. If, 50 gallons went to suite 1, 20 gallons went to suite 2, and whatever. That's something for internal, landlord tenant things. We do not subtract and send out multiple bills. We bill off of one meter, and it's.
But I'm just trying to understand, did we get paid
Let's give them that.
twice for the same water?
So,
The throughput.
yeah, I think what Molly's asking is, did the town receive money from Dollar Tree and H&R Block as well? Is that what you're asking?
And Liquors 44.
And Liquors
for the
44.
Same.
Is that
Yes,
did that?
it
happen,
is
Kim?
correct. Yes, it is.
So I'm thoroughly confused here. How did we know how much to bill Dollar Tree and
H&R Block.
H&R Block if everything went through this one meter?
So so all of the water went through the initial meter, which was billed to Liquors 44. After
Yeah.
going through, all of the water went through that meter. After that meter, it broke into two lines and it went through two other meters, one meter for H&R Block and one meter for Dollar Tree. So that water that went through that one single line was billed to Liquors 44. The water that continued on through the lines was also billed to Dollar Tree and to H&R Block.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay.
When you changed from 3 meters at Liquors 44 to the master meter that was going to be red, who did the plumbing?
I have no idea who the plumber is.
But I don't think that's relevant. So what I'm hearing now
Yes.
is that Mr. Morrison pays for X amount of gallons of water, and then some of that goes to meter A and meter B, H&R Block, Dollar Tree, and they are paying for that water as well. And if that's the reality, then I agree that he's paying.
Yeah, the town
For
isn't
everybody.
getting shorted
I-
because the water's being paid for twice.
Yeah, I think when this started, and I was ready to say, sorry, Andrew, yeah. But I thought that there was an allocation issue, right? Where there was just, here's the pie of the water bill. And that because of issues with the meters internally after the town, right? And in that case, I would agree if that's between the property manager and the tenant, that if he was paying more than he should have been, but we were just getting paid once. So I am struggling with the fact that we're getting paid twice for even a modest amount of water.
So ultimately, when the change happened from the 3 meters for Liquors 44 being billed to the 1, at that time, the property management was notified of this change. They were notified that if there was any other tenants whose water was going to be running through this master meter, that they needed to make any type of adjustments that were necessary so that it would ensure that the billing was proper. So at that time, Eden Zavant clearly dropped the ball and did not continue to look into this, and basically did not respond to Sharon Gifford at the time that there was any other issue with this whole situation. So the current meter setup is not set up properly for the landlord to be able to charge the tenants, because legally they have to be able to show that the water is being specifically used and metered by each individual tenant.
But to
That's
your
how-
to your point, Kim, if from this point forward, the bill is going to the owner and it's their problem to figure out, we're only gonna get paid. Say the bill's $10,000, we're gonna get paid the $10,000. So we're only gonna get paid. This sounds more, I mean, we've been overpaid. And the tenant is asked for $148 and $189, which is what, the most recent bill?
I was told I can only go on the cycle. I can't ask for anything prior on the date. So I'm asking
So
about a refund because I paid $7,000. She found out $7,557. I don't know your request to that.
So initially, when you were talking about the master meter and whatever, and the leaky toilet in H&R Block or whatever, I thought it was the water going through the meter and somebody ran a garden hose basically to your system and supplying their system. And in that case, I'd say, sorry, deal with Dollar Tree or H&R Block or the management.
Exactly.
But if it's being double and triple billed, that's a different story. And you know, it's too bad the property manager didn't step in 12 years ago and do what they were supposed to do. Yeah.
in 15, they started sending the bill to us to do it instead of the property. Tell us so we can find out ourselves and we can do something about it, but I just thought, I know that it's got a little high on your water bill, but it was so high, I never said anything when I happened to see that I said it. It's been $7,000 over these years.
But we fixed the problem basically at this point going forward
Right.
by sending it to the owner. So it's a matter of $300 and something, right?
All right, somebody want to entertain a motion?
Based on what I'm hearing, that Mr. Morrison is paying and the other two tenants have also paid, I make a motion to allow his abatement.
Anyone want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? No. Jennifer, roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Field,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So who does the plumbing?
Okay, so we're going to jump to 6.5, because we have several people we're detaining right now. So employee appointments and resignations. So Lauren, you have been asked to, do we need to do these separately? I would assume so.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Lauren Wilcox, HR Director for the town of Hadley. So I am requesting to hire Tammy Bootwell for the building permitting coordinator position. She has 25 years of experience in building as an administrative assistant, 30 in administrative assistant as well. She's clearly the best person for the job. Her references were amazing, so we hope to hire her.
And Tammy's here tonight.
Yep, she's on with us.
Hi, Tammy.
You're muted.
Yeah. And you've done your homework, you know what you're getting into?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I've done my homework.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions for either Lauren or Tammy, or do you want to move to a motion?
I move to accept.
Second.
Motion made by Jane and seconded by David.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Okay, Tammy, welcome and very much looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
When will you start?
I think January 13th. Now that I know that I'm definitely in, I'm going to give my notice tomorrow.
Thank
So
you.
I'm planning on January 13th.
Great, thank you.
Okay, am I dismissed?
Hang around, yeah.
All right, have a great night.
Thanks.
See you in a couple
Thank you.
hours.
Bye.
And then we just have a resignation for the DPW.
Okay. and-
Before we vote on this, I would just like to ask a question.
Go for it.
Not pertinent to this person in specific, but the process in general, we've been going through DPW employees quite frequently lately. How do we try to replace them? Who's responsible for putting out notifications of job availability? When does it get done? It just seems to me like it would be nice if we had something in our back pocket. If, this keeps happening like this, it'd be nice to have people waiting in the wings, so to speak, that we could hire.
DPW workers are extremely difficult to find, even trying to interview them. We have people that don't show up, so it's a struggle. My suggestion, the process right now is we hear of a resignation and we post the job. My suggestion would be to have a posting up. That way we have candidates kind of available. That being said, they kind of get upset if you don't reach out on the other hand. So
you kind of have to look at it from both sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue that we kind of struggle with in terms of DPW is the CDL requirements. A lot of people can't afford to pay up front for those. And so we run into that people just aren't qualified. And the town currently doesn't pay to help them get their CDLs. So I think that would be helpful, kind of moving forward, putting that in a job posting and helping these people get their
So
certifications.
question about that, if the town were to help pay for the certification, can you put in an employment contract that they would then have to work for the town for a certain period of time that would sort of make that worthwhile? Because otherwise I could apply for the job, get my license and leave.
Correct. So we could, but it would be something that we'd have to work out with the union. Something that would have to be written into their contract. But yes, it
It
certainly
has
could
been
be.
challenged in the past at the court level, and the towns have lost on under certain circumstances, even if it is in the contract. At least for policing. I don't know if DPW would be different.
Okay, so as if I heard correctly, as soon as Scott comes to you guys and says, hey, somebody's leaving, then we get a job posting right away. So that we can, because I know, I mean, winter's here and snow plowing and all that. We're gonna be up the creek if we don't have the right amount of employees.
The other thing we can consider is during certain times of the year, like snow plowing, to hire extra temporary people. That could be, something that we could talk about and discuss. Where you kind of lay them off or they're part-time, just for the season that you need them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, all right, thank you.
you're welcome.
And this resignation is actually future dated, so this is effective December 27th.
Correct.
A motion to accept Jeffrey Askew's resignation effective December 27th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, motion made by James, seconded by Randy. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Nevin Smith,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, mutual aid agreement. Are we doing that tonight, Mike? I don't see the fire chief, or is this just administrative?
I think it's more administrative,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just something that the select board is the only entity that can enter into this agreement, and I don't think there's any objection.
And this agreement is something we do every, how many years?
I think it's annually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed, so
Nope.
I have no problem approving this.
Make a motion.
So motion to approve the mutual aid agreement as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Randy, seconded by Jane. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yeah.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6.3, Linda. Linda Sanderson, our treasurer, is here to talk about treasurer and finance manager to share the revenue projections for us to discuss moving forward.
Are you able to put this on the screen, Jennifer?
Yep.
So this is our kickoff of the 26 budget has begun this week. The budget memo, which you have in board docs, went out to department heads with their budget worksheets to begin working on their 26 budget, and those are due in the first week or two, however soon they can get them in, of January. And Mike Mason and I are all set to meet with whoever signs up, and Jennifer set up the doodle
sign up sheet. So hopefully we will be getting them in 2-3 times a week for a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hour sessions. We're letting them book and sign up so that we can meet and go through them. They have been told that the revenue increase is not as high as it's been in some recent years, and that the free cash available is a little bit less now as well, and that's what I want to go over with you. But if you read the memo, the message to them is still make the requests that they would make. We are not prejudging at this point our whole situation. We want always that the requests that departments make are realistic requests based on what they think their department needs for providing the services they are charged with providing to the town. And we will then take it from there. So we're starting with the revenues. The projected revenues for 26 are in the blue column. The year that we're in, green, is 25. There's 2 columns there because the first column is what we projected and the next column is what we have received to date. And then I decided just this afternoon to expand 24 in the same way and put in projected and actual. And in the process, there's a few numbers in the wrong place down in the transfer section. The top is good. So if you're looking at saying what's happened with free cash, that $1 million figure actually belongs up in the free cash line. What happens is each year I might change the label of a particular line depending on what the funding sources we're using, and it doesn't always reflect back well historically, apparently. So I apologize for that, and I'll try and get a corrected one out tomorrow. So again, now we're back in the blue column, and the next column shows the change from 25 to 26, which is the projected columns, projected 25 to projected 26. So we're looking at just over $544,000 increase in property tax revenues. Hopefully something over 75,000 is state aid and local receipts. That's basically everything else that we receive from the departments, from room and meals tax, all of our, we have a very long column, which you will see later on when we get that where we want it to be. But we're looking at about almost $131,000 increases in local receipts, bringing our subtotal to 753. And with enterprise funds, we're just over $800,000 in revenue increases for FY26. That's about, you know, that's good. That's good. What that means, what the revenue increase means, that's the money we have available to spend on the next year's budgets. But then we have to go down into the transfers column and see that we have on the first line free cash available, $686,000. That's actually our entire certified free cash, and we may or may not want to use all of it, but that's what we have available at this point following a special town meeting. That, because it's a decrease of the free cash we applied for 25, it actually is showing up in a negative in the change column, in the change column. We're also able to add in some money for these special revenues from ambulance. We'll use the opioid funds again, and depending on how we look at OPEB this year, we may fund it from some of it from stabilization again, but that's kind of an open question at this point. As a result of the transfers that are available, we have to reduce our revenues by about $200,000, mainly because of the free cash going down, which means we only have $600,000 to add to the 26 budgets over what we had in 25. So there's a few other things to point out here for our situation that really greatly impact our situation for 26. One is that we're going to be moving the ambulance budget into the general budget for the first time. It's about time that we started doing it. The accountant recommends it. Really, it's something we ought to be doing. So what that's going to do is at least increase the budget by that $650,000, which, as you see, is actually more than we have so far projected as available in additional revenues. So that's a funding plan that we will be dealing with. We don't yet have the budgets in, so we don't know from others, from school, highway, benefits, what the increases are going to be. The benefits ones, we really wouldn't have anything to that we could cut. Those are required additional increases. And how it's going to impact other departments, yet we don't know. So we have to see what the whole picture looks like. And I do want to point out, these are preliminary. We have been through it once in a finance team meeting, and this is where we landed. By January, we will have a whole half year of information. So we'll be looking back at July through December revenues, and we'll then be able to see if that looks like we're on track for 25 and give us a much better idea of where we're going to go for 26. So I'm looking forward to perhaps having, maybe we'll have an improved revenue situation at that point. But we thought it was important to get this to you now. We usually do get this information out in December. We met with Finance Committee about 3 hours ago, and we went through this information with them too. We wanted to introduce what the possible issues are that are coming up. A couple of points that I want to make to kind of caution you about getting too concerned. For 24, we had projected revenues that came in 400,000 higher than our projections. So our revenues tend to be conservative. That's one point I want to make. There's no guarantee, but that's one point. And the other is that our budgets came in 600,000 lower than what we had budgeted out. So there is some, I'm not saying at all that we budget high, but we budget to allow for things that may happen during the year. There are things that we have to budget, the various departments have to budget for. And if you have a highly paid position uncovered for a few months, or some other program that is changed or delayed start, that does impact what is spent during the year. And we're grateful that department heads let that money sit there and roll back in for us to use the next year, and don't scramble around looking for other ways to pay it. So I think it's a good thing that we can say that we have 600,000 in rollbacks from 24. And because of the way we have to budget revenues, we hope that they come in, and they have been for the last several years. They've been coming in higher than we projected. So that's why we don't want to get overly concerned that we're in a bad situation, but it is going to impact the way we go about work, meeting with departments, and the budget we would put over to you in January. We're aware that you will certainly want some input when it comes to setting the priorities for the budget this year. It has been a helpful part of budgeting over the last few years to have some identified priorities. 2 or 3 years ago, it was public safety, because there was a lot that needed to be done in police and fire, with additional personnel and increased wages, because we had so much turnover at the time. So that was an identified priority. And the last couple of years, it's been dealing with the increases needed under union and non-union wages, to get our wages across the board up to where they should be. And we will, once we get our numbers together, what we'll do is we will assemble all the requests and have the total for what that is. And that's always a kind of a stunning figure. But we want it to be that way. Again, we should always be aware of what it is that departments want and feel that they could do for the town. And that's a good starting point. And we'll then come back, and we will have met with departments in that time frame. But before we come up with a final budget and determine where we would make our how we would allocate what we have available, we'd come back to Select Board and Finance Committee and get your input on that. Are any
questions for Linda?
So don't panic yet, is what you're saying.
That's right, that's right. Panic, yeah.
She
No.
said something to me in the office before we came over here and I reiterated it with the finance committee, so I'll say it to you. She said, this is not a crisis. We'll figure this out. We are not in crisis right now, so keep that in the back of your mind.
Always good to hear.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, not
It's
a
an
crisis.
opportunity.
Are your projections including the new motel that should be opening soon?
That section of projections, we work with the building inspector and with the assessor to have them pull in those, that kind of information. So we will drill down a little deeper on specifics over the next couple of months. I think what we typically do is by the time we pull the budget together, I mean, that's where we just have to say, that's it for revenues. We draw the line and say, this is it. We have to have something that isn't continually going up and down. I'm not sure exactly when that enters the system. We kind of rely on assessor's office and others to sort of come in with that. Here's the timing. Again, we all tend towards the conservative and handling in so many ways, but we don't like to count things before we know right when they're
Understood.
coming
Yeah,
in.
understood.
But it's a good question and ask it next time.
I will. Thank you. Well, one of the finance committee members ought to have a good answer for that.
I think that's a good source as well. Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Town administrator?
Yes. All right, in the interest of time, I will go through the TA report and you can stop me or get to the end and ask any questions. So positions in the interview process, obviously, you heard we have multiple DPW positions that are either being posted or being interviewed for benefits coordinator in the interview process. Tonight, your building department permitting person was extended an offer of employment. Our principal assessor is in the training phase right now. So that's headed in the right direction. We have put the opioid and mental health counselor on hold for the time being. I won't get too deep into the weeds on that one, but we will still have our embedded clinician and all of the normal services we offer, but we're just gonna hold off on this likely until the new budget cycle. There's some things that are happening right now with CSO that we'd like to make sure that can continue to happen. Obviously, your service delivery plan, Rita knocked that out of the park tonight, so you're all set there. The classification, compensation, and succession. This is, Jennifer and I actually just got an email at the start of this meeting from the folks at Collins that they are working on this. We actually do have 2 grants to cover the costs of all of these. We just need to make sure that we can get an extension from the state. So we won't have to worry about coming up with any funds to complete this project. Fiber update, we did have our internal department head meeting to hash out any problems we have, and I will be scheduling a full IT meeting and bringing all of our IT personnel together in the same room so we can go over this. Go over the completion of the fiber project. Ambulance and fire, you heard during the budget discussion that this is something that we'll be attacking and it will be a kind of a centerpiece to our FY26 budget build. Your solar project, we are still working on collecting names. The finance committee did make a nomination tonight. We do have a couple of people who requested to be on the solar committee, but we are not ready to bring the names back. We don't have enough yet. Russell School, nothing has changed there, but they are working on it. Their final report should be January, February, and I have high hopes for it. I think they're going to do a great job on this. The town hall consultant, obviously the kickoff meeting occurred, that was back in November. A second meeting has been had and a presentation was done with the historical commission, so that is well underway. The levy rehab project, I'm not sure what has changed since the last meeting because a bunch of things have happened all in a very positive direction. We have Rich Niles from the company who has been doing the reporting on this, and Senator Comerford and Rep. Gomez have been, we actually have meetings scheduled with representative delegation for January. We should have some really, I expect some really positive things to come from that meeting. So more to come on that, but I like where that one's heading as well. The Goodwin project, we will be attacking the procurement after the new year, just getting through the holidays and trying to clean a bunch of other things up. TA search, that contract has been completed. It has been approved by legal. It is with the vendor currently, and I'm sure you probably have seen the emails. If you haven't, expect them soon. They have all of your contact information, and they will be starting this process immediately upon the new year. So that is moving in the right direction, finally. Library roof, obviously you heard about that tonight. Strategic planning still moving in the right direction. And just as a side note, the union negotiations for all of the unions that the select board has control over, with the exception of the fire department, have been scheduled. We have everybody hopefully arriving in the same room at the same time. That was an undertaking in and of itself. So we will be starting negotiations very soon in January. We have 2 dates, as well as obviously Linda and I will be underwater with starting FY26 budgets. So I wouldn't expect to see too much of us in January. That's it. If anybody has any questions, fire away.
I do. On the fiber, are we done actually stringing physical fiber?
Yes.
Okay.
Done.
So
The last part of the project was getting things hooked up over at the hotel.
Okay. And other than that, we're basically waiting to flip the switch. Is that what we're?
Yeah, well, we have to get all the IT people all on the same page before the switch gets flipped. So we need to put everybody in the room together to make sure that nothing gets missed and everybody is, aware of where the lines cross and we just got to have better communication in this project. But we're there.
Years in the making, so I'm excited.
Very many of them, yeah. So we're good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yes.
thank you for everything. If nothing else for the town administrator, does anybody have any report outs, announcements?
I have a liaison announcement for the Hadley Media. The Digital Equity Steering Committee Open House and Public Meeting will be on January 7th here at the Senior Center. It will start at 3 p.m. and the public hearing will be at 6:30 p.m. Second piece to that, not about the digital equity, but Hadley Media is looking for community members and students to be sports announcers. If you're interested in that, please contact Alex.
Cool. I've got one.
And you don't have to be a student to be a sports announcer for the high school.
Okay.
All right. This is from Amy Jennings, our Park and Recs director. She would like to personally thank the Hadley Fire Department and especially Fire Chief Mike Spanknagel for taking the time on a weekend to do our annual Santa event. Without the support from the community, I would not be so fortunate to have such fantastic events for our families. Also, another special thanks to Santa for making his delightful journey to Hadley.
All right, anybody else? Just have a couple of condolences since our last meeting. Select Board wishes to express condolences to the friends and family of George Arch, who was a longtime volunteer in Hadley, and also recently David Gogan. So again, sorry for your loss. And if nothing else, then we do have executive session.
I'll make a motion. I'm still here. I'll make a motion to move into executive session pursuant with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, this would be for the compensation study, an open meeting law violation, and executive session minutes.
Second.
No, more to come.
Hold on, Amy, can I make a friendly amendment to your motion? We have some updated language.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. This-
Okay.
Okay, I'll read the whole thing just to be on the safe side here. That a clean enough way to do it, okay. So it's on the. I make a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body for the compensation study, open meeting violation, and executive session minutes June 20th, 2023, and Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1 to review, discuss, and consider the Select Board's response to the open meeting law complaint against it dated December 4th, 2024, filed by Anthony Fiden and on file with the town clerk. Whereas said discussion involves a complaint brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, and to reconvene in open session to vote to approve the same.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. As chair of the Hadley Select Board, I state that the board has moved and seconded to enter into executive session. And I state that discussing the matter in open session will have a detrimental impact on the bargaining position of the town of Hadley. Jennifer, roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Phil,
Yes.
Keegan.
Yes.
Isaac.
Yes.
Nevin Smith.
Yes.
And Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Molly, and to open.
Ask is that if we can
We're live? Okay,
Recording in progress.
okay, so the select board has reconvened in open session.
You have to
And-
let people into the meeting.
There's nobody. I'm watching the meeting. I got it. I got the whole thing.
There, so we're good?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to allow town council to address the open meeting law complaint. Submitted by Anthony Fiden relative to the special town meeting on behalf of the select board.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Randy and seconded by Amy. Jennifer, roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote. Gil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Nevin,
Yes.
and Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everybody. That concludes. Into executive session.
I'll make a motion to return to executive session.
Second?
Motion made by Randy, seconded by Jane. Jennifer, roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Gil,
Yes.
Keegan,
Yes.
Isaac,
Yes.
Nevin Smith,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. And everyone enjoy your holidays.